there's one thing that really bothers me, and that is when the PRB paroles somebody, right? And they go back to the community and they commit another crime, that's all over the front page of the newspapers. How could they have paroled that guy? The parole board made a mistake, oh my God. But when somebody gets paroled and they lead a positive life outside of prison, like you, like Eric, like Wendell Robinson, like you could name Ronaldo, a whole bunch of people who are contributing to their community. Is there anything in the newspapers? No. The Prisoner Review Board makes more mistakes denying parole than granting parole, and that should be publicized more.
Welcome to another podcast episode of Unshackled Building Bridges. Today we have Chief Charles Hoffman, licensed lawyer in Illinois for nearly 50 years, with nearly 50 years of experience. I'm going to turn it over to my partner Ronnie since Charles had a lot to do with you being here, Ronnie. I'm going to let you start it off.
Today, here we go. So as usual, I got to keep my papers in front of me so I can keep track of what I'm doing. So I want to thank you for taking the time to visit and share history here with us, that you have an extensive history, like you said, with the criminal justice system. I thank you for that service, and I know there's thousands of guys that thank you for that, and not only them, but attorneys who go to you for advice, probably judges and state attorneys also. So that's, I don't know, what is it, 40?
I'll talk to all of them except state's attorneys.
That's it? What is it, 40 or 50 years?
51 years now. Ooh. And thanks for inviting me to talk here. I really appreciate it.
Here we go. So my first question for today is, what made you go from being a private attorney, that I think you had 20 years of that?
Yeah, well, on and off, yeah.
On and off, and then to go from there to settle yourself in the appellate defender's office, what?
Well, when I was in private practice at a private law office, it wasn't the regular private law office that people think about. It's the People's Law Office, which was a commune of lawyers who started in the late 60s representing movements like the Black Panther Party or the Puerto Rican independence groups. And so it was as much political as it was legal. And I was there for 7 years and learned a lot from the lawyers who were there before I was. Dennis Cunningham, Michael Deutsch, Flint Taylor, Jan Sussler, the lawyers who fought for their clients and their clients' movements. And so I learned a lot about being a lawyer, but then I wanted to specialize in criminal law. The People's Law Office did some criminal law, but they mainly did civil rights law and prison law. But I wanted to concentrate on criminal law because a lot of people that I knew coming up ended up in prison. I was fortunate I didn't, although that's only because I didn't get caught in some things that I did. So that's why I switched, and I went to the appellate defender's office because they totally concentrate in criminal stuff. And then when the death penalty came back to Illinois in 1978, I thought that would be another real challenge. I thought capital punishment was a terrible institution. It's racist, classist. It was prone to make mistakes, sending innocent people to death row and sending people who didn't deserve to be on death row to death row. So from 1980 till 2011, when we got rid of the death penalty, I was doing death penalty appeals and death penalty post-convictions. But I kept up with the lawyers in the People's Law Office. I still work with them a bit, and as you know, I consult with Michael on various cases such as yours.
And so I want to talk a little bit about how Charles and I met. I met him through Michael Deutsch, so I'm a happy camper of the People's Law Office, and I know Jan and I know Mike and many of the people in there, Flint Taylor, so all of them, you know, helping through the years fighting my case. So me and Mike, I think it was the year 2000, and I started saying to him about the Prison Review Board, I said, we have to file this thing in court. We have to file something in court about my judge being a crook, and they had me what was called time bars. As you know, time bar meant I had all my remedies in the court were over with. They just wanted me to spend 600 years in prison according to them. And Mike said, we're gonna make it from the parole board. And I said, no. I said, we have to file the petition. So I guess I bugged him enough. I kept on. And he said, let me ask a friend of mine. I said, who you talking? He told me it was Charles Hoffman. He said, he's in the appellate defender's office. I didn't know you. And then he sent me a email that you had sent him, and all it said on there was file it. I was like, man, yes. So it was you, that it was your encouragement that, you know, instigated that spirit that they sat down, the People's Law Office, and at that time, what's her name was in there was, can't think of it right now, it'll come to my head.
Right.
But yeah, she left just recently.
Mm-hmm.
And they filed the situation about the judge being a crook, so that's what started my legal journey. And then that led into, once you got involved and came visit me in Dixon, then Jennifer got involved. But while you came to visit me, you started studying the sentencing aspect of it.
Right.
And it just grew from there. Then you started going into the brain development, the scientific part. You had all these elements that you brought in. So it was between you, Michael Deutsch, Charles Hoffman, Jennifer Sobel, you know, as a team that you kept prying in different ways, and that was part of my relief. So we had Jennifer in here last week, then we're gonna bring Michael in here, and it's a great thing to watch what you did, and I wanna some kind of way more than hearing the podcast of congratulating you. And when I first came home, we went to eat and like that, but how do you balance out, or how do you show, which I don't know how to do, that somebody that fought and gave you a liberty. And I used to joke with Mike, I think I told Jennifer, but I used to joke with her all the time. I used to joke with him and say, man, Mike, you know, you get me out of here, I'll shovel you the snow for the rest of my life. You know, so you're steady scratching. And then when I made it home, I'm like, man, could I really do that? Could I really? And it didn't snow too much.
We know what folks say when we can help them on their journey, and we know it's all heartfelt, but not necessarily something somebody needs to do. We appreciate the attitude of thankfulness. But I'll tell you, as you know, you went before the Prisoner Review Board more than 30 times over 47 years, and you had the best lawyers you could possibly have in Jennifer Sobel and Michael Deutsch. If they couldn't get you parole, nobody was going to get you parole, because the parole board was never going to get you paroled. And two things happened, as I remember. Michael, who had represented you for many, many years, was focusing on the fact that the judge who sentenced you took bribes to acquit a mob hitman, and then you come along and he's got to show how tough he is. So rather than convicting you of manslaughter, which probably was in the facts of your case, he found you guilty of murder and then sentenced you to 200 to 600 years to show what a tough judge he was. But when the feds caught up with him, what did he do? He committed suicide. He felt so guilty. So another thing that happened was, while Michael was working on your case, the United States Supreme Court decided a case called Miller versus Alabama, which said you couldn't give anybody life unless you considered their youth and its attendant circumstances. That applied to people who were up to 17. And then the Illinois Supreme Court decided a case called People versus Harris, which said, no, if you're up to 21, and you can show that you had the brain maturity of a juvenile, which, you know, people's brains don't really fully develop until they're about 25. And that has a lot to do with peer pressure and thinking of the consequences. So I told Michael, add an issue to Ronnie's case. Say that his original sentencing hearing wasn't constitutional. He should get a new sentencing hearing. And so we went to court, and
we were successful.
We were successful, although we were not successful the first time. The judge denied it, went up to the appellate court twice, and twice the appellate court told the trial judge, you've got to listen to this evidence. And so the second time we went back, the judge granted a new sentence hearing, and then we went before the judge. The same evidence that the Prisoner Review Board heard and denied you parole 8-1, when that judge heard exactly the same evidence, he said, Ronnie Carrasquillo is rehabilitated, he can go home today, gave you time served.
Same judge.
Same judge.
Yeah, it was an experience going through that, to go up there and hear the testimony, and then when it first started, to go through the long speech of the judges were crooks and the judges were no good and the whole thing, and then turn around. But in your case, he was okay.
Yeah.
And you hear that, and you say, how did that work? So the other attorney that I couldn't think of her name was Shubra O'Reilly.
Yeah.
So Shubra's the one that played a role in this also. So it was a blessing to be able to go on a visit. And when you're inside of the prison and people see you going visits and they know you're going for an attorney visit, everybody, hey, help me. Hey, can you talk to them about me? So you're hearing all these requests as you're going, almost like a counselor. Okay. And you're going up there. You don't even know what you're going for or what's going to happen when they want to bring all these other cases up there. But that's just how many people sit in there that need help.
Absolutely. A lot of people in there need help. And most people never have anything to do with lawyers in the criminal justice system. But if you get caught up in the criminal justice system, you don't know who's a good lawyer, who's a bad lawyer, who's going to represent you. And so you feel kind of lost. And then if you get convicted and get sent to prison, you're out of sight and out of mind. Generally, until if you've got contacts on the outside who know somebody or can get you help, it's almost like a miracle.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Like Jennifer, I love it that she has like her knowledge, that hope put on her arm, because I was from the other side of the fence. They're outside now, but where you see people don't brush their hair, comb their hair, clean their teeth, or close their zippers, and they just.
Let me say one more thing. We were talking about how Jennifer and Michael and I got you out of prison. We didn't get you out of prison. Ronnie got Ronnie out of prison, because what you did inside the walls of those prisons was unbelievable in changing your outlook on your life, becoming a positive person, finding God, helping others inside the prison, creating programs inside the prison. There's no judge that could look at you and say, this person is not rehabilitated. You rehabilitated yourself, and you contributed 99% of yourself getting out of prison. So we can take credit for filing papers and making arguments, but if you hadn't changed your life around, you would still be there.
So, Chick, let me ask you a question. So, since you're saying this right now, what did you see in Ronnie's case that made you want to step in?
Two things. One, Michael asked me to step in. Michael was my mentor, Michael Deutsch at the People's Law Office, one of my mentors there. And I came up under him and under Flint. And even today, when I go to court, what do I say to myself? What would Michael do? So I did it out of respect for Michael. Then I met Ronnie. And if you meet Ronnie and see what kind of person he is, I just thought, this guy needs to be back in the community. We got to get him out of there.
Interesting, he does.
He does, yeah.
It's a good thing.
And I thank you for that. I thank you for everything you did, too.
So, and I didn't really find God, he found me, because I was going the wrong end of the stick. I was, not looking for him and didn't have no relationship like that. So, but I had a family that was stuck with me. And
that's the other amazing thing about Ronnie's case. He had family members sticking with him who weren't even born when he went in. Ronnie told me once he had, nieces and nephews who thought Uncle Ronnie was a pretend uncle because they had never seen him.
Yeah.
And Ronnie's sister, Dayra, if you watch the documentary that's been done on Ronnie, Dayra is a hero.
She's the one. Everybody that watches that documentary, when it's done, they're like, that woman, I want to meet her there. And I said, yeah, it's her documentary. She's doing good. So
everybody, whether they're in prison or out of prison, they need a sister like Dayra.
It just shows the compassion of it. So I'm glad the way this all transpired. So we'll go off my situation. I want to ask you a question, see what comes out of here. And it's about, in your career, which case stands out to you to the most, and whether sometimes it could be in the loss department, sometimes it could be in the win department. So you have a particular one that this case really took me away.
I think I want to talk about a win and a loss. The win is obviously your case, because I played a part in getting a person out of prison back into the community where they can do the most good, where they can lead their best life and affect other people in a positive way. The loss I had is, while I was doing death penalty cases for 30 years, I had one client one friend, Walter Stewart, who was executed. And I represented Walter for 17 years. And I could go into a lot of details, but let me just say, on the day of Walter's execution, on November 22nd, 1997, I was at the prison, at the death house in Stateville. And Walter was in a cell, the bars were between us, and I was at a little table in front of the cell in the death house. And the governor, at that time, Governor Edgar, hadn't decided Walter's clemency petition yet. And I was sitting there talking to Walter, and then a guard came and called me to the warden's office. And the warden said, the governor turned you down. So I had to go tell Walter that the execution was going to go ahead. And I remember thinking while I was walking, I've seen this movie before where the lawyer has to go to the guy and say, the governor turns you down. And here I had to do it in real life. So I went to the death house and I told Walter, and it was like I punched him in his stomach and he fell back about 2 feet. And then he did the thing you hear about. Walter started comforting me, telling me, oh, you had done everything you could do and don't feel bad or guilty. And then the guards came and said, counsel, you have to leave. And I said, okay. And I went and hugged Walter through the bars. And I'm telling you, I could hear the guards saying, counsel, you have to leave, counsel, you have to leave. And I wanted to leave, but I physically couldn't remove my arms from around Walter. And it took a long time for my brain to finally help me let go. And then we left the prison. We went back in the evening. Up here in Illinois, nobody was in the execution chamber for the person who was going to be executed. The only people who could be there were the prosecutors and the families of the person who was murdered. But we were on the phone with Walter till midnight and after midnight, and then the phone just went dead. And I'm glad we were able to get rid of the death penalty in Illinois, because nobody should have to go through that trauma again. So that was the low point.
Wow.
Well, that was a victory for the death penalty to be, you know, the moratorium that the governor put on there, and then finally ended it. So that was a good thing. The next big question I have, and I have it wrote, but I want to just kind of paraphrase because I have a friend in this predicament, not to mention no names, but it's about juvenile lifers. From my recollection, and it could be wrong, there was, I think, 103, somewhere around there, in the state of Illinois that were juveniles with natural life, and I believe 70-something were granted some kind of rhythm to get a sentence and go home, and then it started closing the door on the other 30, and a friend of mine is stuck in that 30, and I want to ask you, you know, what can we do? Because now they say, what I kept hearing about that is that they, in this class of the 30, the judge has discretion whether to give them or not, and that in my mind, I remember the United States Supreme Court ordered them to take these juveniles and give them numbers and address it that way. So my question is, you know, what's the standing of those 30-something people? Are they like a class, or are they individual basis? You know, and then where's that standing at? What's their fate?
To paraphrase a religious statement, the legislature and the courts giveth, and then they taketh away.
Oh, that's bad.
You know,
it's true.
For a long time, the courts, you know, there was all this scientific information about juveniles not as culpable as adults, and so the legislature and the courts started noticing that juveniles should be treated less harshly than adults if they get involved in the criminal legal system. And actually, here's what the law is now in Illinois. You can't give a juvenile life without parole, period, if they're going to trial and get convicted now. Also, if you're a juvenile and you get convicted, you're eligible for juvenile parole, which means after 10 years or after 20 years, you can go before the Prisoner Review Board and get parole if you're rehabilitated. Those are two good things. Here are the bad things. The juvenile parole statute isn't retroactive, which means all of the juveniles who got sentenced to life without parole before the law went into effect, they don't have that right. they're in exactly the same situation as the people who've been convicted and sentenced after the law. But the Illinois legislature is, these groups that you mentioned, Restore Justice and Prison Project, are all trying to get the legislature to make it retroactive. If they can make it retroactive, those 30 young people who got sentenced to prison would be eligible for parole. So that's what's happening now. And there's also the law that we relied on to get you some action in your case. If you're a juvenile, when you had your sentence, and some guys were sentenced as juveniles 20, 30, 40 years ago, they had to consider the person's youth and its attendant circumstances, everything that goes into it, peer pressure, not understanding consequences and all that. But you have to get back into court. And it's really difficult to get back into court because the courts say, well, you should have brought this up a long time ago. When, why didn't you say anything about it before? And the reason is nobody knew about it before, but the courts don't care. So they say you have to have cause for why you didn't bring it in your first post-conviction petition, which you might have filed 20 years ago before all this juvenile brain science was developed. So we're pushing a law that we're trying to get the legislature to pass to say you don't have to show cause. So if we can get that legislature passed, those 30 guys will be back in court, and then the judge has discretion to lower the sentence and to make them parole eligible.
So you know that bill off the top of your head, the number?
No, I don't. It might be. I think it's been in a couple sessions of the legislature. I think it's Senate Bill 248 now.
So
And it passed the Senate and is back in the House of Representatives now, down in Springfield.
So that's pending, and also the
That's pending. Restore Justice is doing a great job lobbying for it. And it passed the House, the past session, but because it died in the Senate, it didn't become law. This time it passed the Senate, and it passed the first time in the House by a vote of like 70 to 42. So we're pretty confident we're going to get it passed and the governor will sign it. But that would get a lot of guys a lot of relief and a lot of sentence action. And unfortunately, ever since the war on crime and when they called juvenile super predators and all that garbage from the 80s, people get so much time in Illinois now. It doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason for people keeping people in prison for 40, 50 years, because many of them, if not most of them, are not the same. I remember I was talking about Walter Stewart. He was a completely different person 17 years while I was representing him. So everybody who is progressive in the criminal justice movement is trying to get some action for these juveniles. But it's an uphill battle.
Well, of course. So the other one that's a potent Senate bill that we could keep tabs on and mention from here and there on this podcast.
And people should call their representatives.
Yeah, we got to come up with a strategy of voicing this out. But the other one is that you filed, that I just found out today. I didn't know you were jointly with State Rep Jimenez on having the post-conviction succession. Oh, this is the same bill?
That's the same bill. The first time it went in, it was House Bill 3375. That died. Now it's Senate Bill 248, but it's back in the House. So I assume she's going to still be the same sponsor, but there's a lot of sponsors for that bill. It has a real good chance of passing.
Okay, so the most thing that we can do basically is follow this bill and then try to get it passed with them. Other than that, the 30-something people that are in that predicament are just going to stay in that predicament.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay.
Wasted lives.
Well, because I have a few friends in that situation, and I have a few friends that were in a situation that are outside, like Eric, that were in that same situation. They got their years and they went home and they become productive citizens for something they did 14, 15 years old as kids. And now they're doing just fine in society.
I know, and there's one thing that really bothers me, and that is when the PRB paroles somebody, right? And they go back to the community and they commit another crime, that's all over the front page of the newspapers. How could they have paroled that guy? the parole board made a mistake, oh my God. But when somebody gets paroled and they lead a positive life outside of prison, like you, like Eric, like Wendell Robinson, like you could name Ronaldo, a whole bunch of people who are contributing to their community. Is there anything in the newspapers? No. The Prisoner Review Board makes more mistakes denying parole than granting parole. And that should be publicized more.
That's a whole nother situation to talk about. So whether we could see about that's what we're going to ask you this question now, and this will be the last question I have from there.
Okay.
So Jennifer, in my case situation, decided with Michael Deutsch and you to reach out to a documentary.
Right.
And it's called In Their Hands. It's on PBS. And I wanted to ask you about that. What was the most potent part of that filming that stood out to you that was effective in what we were trying to do? What aspect of it? A lot of people look at that film and they'll say, oh, this my sister, which is a true thing about family, because family is so important. You know, other people are focused on the border, they shouldn't have said that. Other people focus on the police department and what they said. Other people focus on when I walked out the door of the prison, where the emotionalness of it, everybody hugging and crying and screaming, and they latched onto that. So which take was the one that got you? Like,
I already talked about Dayra, so
you're a Dayra fan.
I'm a Dayra fan. Pick out one thing. It's like if somebody says, "Oh, you listened to that symphony. Which part did you like best?" It's like I liked the whole thing. Every frame in that documentary film means something. It has some meaning. It shows how bad the parole board is. It shows how strong your lawyers were, Jennifer and Michael. It shows how backwards some state senators are, and I won't name anybody, they can watch the movie. And it shows how you changed your life around and became a productive member of society. So I don't think I can pick out one thing. I like the fact that in the movie at one point, Dayra says, "Oh, here comes Charles Hoffman."
Yeah.
So that kind of was a kick for me.
Yeah, somebody's important coming here.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
Somebody's important coming
But, so I can't pick any one thing out. I think the whole thing is like a symphony. You have to watch the whole thing and take from every frame in that thing.
I think when I watched that, there's so many different things to point out. You could point out, but when they did the dinner and then Dana asked you to come up, you, Michael and Jennifer and you, and spoke to you saying about, how they did this or that.
Right.
What came out of that to me when I watched it was you were the soothing agents to the people in that arena that they've been fighting 30 and 40 years and they were distraught, downtrodden, and you coming up saying that we're going to take this to court and we're going to do this. And they just erupted into an applaud that you had another strategy. So that part was exciting for me.
It was, and for me too, because lawyers want to win cases for different reasons, for ego or for money or whatever. But we wanted to win your case for you. We wanted to win your case for justice. We wanted to win your case for the Carrasquillo family and all of the other people who you've affected. So, you can thank me, but like I said, I get so much out of doing this work, I don't need any thanks. The thanks is doing the work.
Yeah, it's like I got him again.
So since you're saying that, Charles, let me ask you, was there ever a moment in your life, like where you're doing all this work, that you felt that the system will never be transformed?
You can't be that cynical and do the work. You know what I mean? Hope. You got to have hope. What was it? Martin Luther King Jr., who said the arc of justice always bends toward justice, but it bends very slowly. Yeah. 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. But until we can get rid of racism and classism and all the other isms that are in our society generally, we're not going to get rid of the racism and other problems in the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system reflects society in general, and we've got some real problems in our society in general. So we got to fix society if we want to fix the criminal justice system. But I remain hopeful. Yeah.
It all plays a role.
It's all about hope.
Yeah, so in the end of it, well, during the documentary, I have a problem with that word, so with the documentary,
Say film.
when the film was going on, and the chairman of the board at that time was he basically told Jennifer, we're not gonna allow this, we're not gonna allow that, and he started chastising her, you know, you can see that it like rattles her for a second, but she regained the composure, she didn't put her guard down, and as when it happened and it was going on, I just sat there and I said this in the gala, when we had the gala for the speech, I said that it's sad what they were doing, but because they couldn't make me mad, they kept doing it for 40 years,
Right.
so I was already burnt up with being mad,
Right.
but that I was saying that they were getting other people mad that can really do something about it. And they were making you guys mad,
Yep.
and that brought her. So when I watched her in action on the film, to turn around and say, well, I just want to mention it because of this reason. I understand what you said, but just with composure,
Yep.
just to be getting socked up, you're not gonna, but, okay, fine, but just let me mention this, where I would be already, toe to toe, ready to
I know.
go a different way.
That's a professional, right?
that's
Jennifer
a-
Sobel, professional, cool, calm, very strategic. And since you mentioned it, I want to point out for the viewers, the person that the PRB didn't want to hear from was the person who prosecuted your case,
That's the
who
problem.
was the person who got you convicted, who came before the PRB and said, I prosecuted Ronnie Carrasquillo for murder. I got his conviction, but I never thought he was going to spend more than 15 or 20 years in prison. I think he should get out. I mean, that's probably the most relevant, powerful evidence for why you should have gotten paroled, and they didn't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it. We're not gonna let him talk today.
Yeah.
So I am done with my questions. You have any questions?
Yeah, I got one last question before we close, and then Ryan, you can close it for us
Okay.
once I'm done with the question. And you've seen a lot of men and you've seen a lot of women behind bars. And what's the difference between them wanting a second chance and a transformation, and having a transformation in their life? What's the difference for you? Like, for someone with a second chance, thinking about a second chance in life, and someone that's been transformed?
Wow. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question.
I think you are.
Well, I've always wondered how people in prison who I've had a lot of contact with not only maintain their sanity, given all the pressures and the craziness in prison and the fear and all that, not only how you remain sane, but how you change your life, because the Illinois Department of Corrections doesn't rehabilitate anybody. They have to rehabilitate themselves, although programs like Ronnie's been starting may help with that. Second chances, what does that really mean? Does it mean that somebody who broke our laws gets returned to society and has a second chance at living a life, a positive life? I mean, I'm in favor of that, obviously. I don't think people should stay in prison. Well, I think that 90% of the people in prison should never have even gone to prison. I don't like the idea of a carceral society where when somebody breaks the law, you just throw their life away. Other countries don't do it the way we do it. So I would say people deserve as many chances as they need, I think, not just second chances.
I agree.
And transformation, if people are capable of transforming themselves, whether they're in prison or on the outside, I mean, you can be a bad person on the outside and transform yourself. More power to you if you're a person sent to prison and transform yourself. So I believe in transformation for everybody and as many chances as they need.
There you go.
Amen.
So that's kind of like a trigger word for me. I have a problem with that word, but when I see people say they're gonna give somebody a second chance, in my situation was, I served my sentence that they gave me, And then the Constitution says, so I'm going to go with what the law says that they have the right to do to me. They sentence me as the offender, and then the Constitution says to restore me to useful citizenship.
Right.
So once I fulfill that data that's wrote down in the Constitution, then I have a problem when somebody comes up and says, now I'm going to give you a second chance, or you have a second chance. That, no, the law was fulfilled. I'm supposed to be restored, and the time came up, and then I'm restored. So I feel like when somebody says they're giving me a second chance, it's like they have a power over you, that you're marginalizing me, holding me in that corner, than what you're going to give me. But the time was served already.
Right.
So if a child does something one time, your child 2 times, 3 times, how many chances do you give them? So we want to keep that second, so it's only 2, but we make mistakes all through our life. And the Bible says we all fall short of the glory of God. So who's this human being is going to come and tell me, I'm going to give you a second chance? So that's my personal trigger. I don't like hearing, and they use it a lot. It's a cliche word now. You know, we're going to give them second chances that. And it should be the reform groups and the people who fight criminal justice system just stand on the Constitution. We just like David Saxon was a friend of mine. He kept saying this. We just want a level playing field to create a standard of fairness. That's all we're looking for, which meant the Constitution. That's what you and Jennifer and Michael Deutsch brought in front of them. The Constitution said this and the law said that, and the judges finally didn't take it personal, and then we have to grant this because the facts meet the situation. They didn't say, we're going to give you a second chance to this. They said, this law's been followed up and we're going to let you go.
I totally understand your feeling on that. I think what happens is sometimes people with good intentions say things that they think need to be said, but the people they say it about don't necessarily agree with it. I was telling you before the recording that I used to say something like, well, what I do is I speak, as a lawyer, I speak for people who don't have a voice. And then somebody pointed out to me, everybody has a voice. As a lawyer, you speak for people who have a voice, but nobody's listening to them. So you have the ability to make their voices heard. So
readjust your position.
Exactly, yeah. You know, it's more about the people you're trying to help than you. So I understand your feeling about that.
So if you don't have nothing to say, we usually close out in a scripture. I give a scripture.
Okay.
And I have a fitting scripture that fits your career. And it's found in the Beatitudes. I'm sure you heard of the Beatitudes. They're in the book of Matthew. And it's 5:6, and it says in there, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And in this case, you fought them to bring righteousness to the table, and it was fulfilled in the release, and I'm sitting right here, I wouldn't be. So I appreciate it.
Amen.
That's a good amen.
Charles, thank you for coming over. It was an honor and a pleasure. This is Unshackled Building Bridges. Until next time,
see you.
Have a good day.
Ronnie's seen it all from the inside walls. Gil got a vision that still stands tall. We don't beg for seats, we build our own. Bridge by bridge, we're bringing them home. Yeah.